Okay,
so yesterday was a little bit overwhelming. So I just wanted to quickly review it because once we summarize it, it's really, really simple. The Gemara started already on Chafam Beis discussing the different features of the different cases where Geula is required. So we listed four basic categories where Geula is required. A Nevid has to be Nigal, and there's the discussion of an Eved Ivri sold to a Yid, and an Eved Ivri sold to a Goy. There's a Stei Achuza that someone sells that has to be Nigal. There's a Stei Achuza that someone is Makdish that has to be Nigal, and there's a Moicher Bayis, a Bote Arechaima that has to be Nigal. The Gemara first started off by asking Rav Sheshes a Shaila. Moicher Bayis, Bebote Arechaima, would it have the benefit of Loya V'Goyel L'Chatzoyin? The reason why the Gemara cleared that Shaila is because the Gemara had previously cleared that Shaila L'Gabi an Evet, and the Gemara ended up remaining B'Sofik. So Rav Sheshes commented that if we work with the Aishin time of the Kra, if we work with Reb Shimon, then it would be logical to argue that since you're at the risk of losing it, if you don't redeem it within the year, logic would dictate that we would make it, the Torah would make it as easy as possible to be Goyal. And therefore, Reb Sheshes paskined that at least according to Reb Shimon, you should be able to be Loiva v'Goyal and Goyal l'Chatzoyin. Now, these two features of Loiva v'Goyal and Goyal l'Chatzoyin are based on the fact that by Moicher Stei Achuza, where it's very easy to get it back, you could redeem it any time after 2 years. And even if you don't, you get it back by Yovel. There's restrictions on how you could be pointed, and the Torah very specifically says Kidei Gulasai, meaning you can't be pointed halfway. And it also says meaning you have to be able to afford it yourself, as a Chaim Fir pointed out yesterday, and not borrow money to be able to bail out your field. So those restrictions the Torah says beferish by Moicher Stei Achuza, but according to Reb Shimon, Dr. Sheshes, it's not logical to apply those restrictions to Moicher Bayis and Batei Arechaima, because since it's not so easy to bail out, you only have a year and you lose it completely if you don't. The svara is that you should allow him to bail it out in any way. Similar to Makdish Stei Achuza, where as well you lose it if you don't point it. There also, the svara is we should make it easy for him to be pointed, and therefore it's loiv v'goyel v'upoigel l'chatzai. That's what the B'Sheshes said. Then the Gemara said, okay, so let's ask the next question. Kroivim. Kroivim is also a feature where you find sometimes Kroivim you could be goyel. We know Kroivim, the Torah says beferish, Kroivim can be goyel, and Eved Ivri that was sold to a goy, and we also know that Kroivim can be goyel a Stei Achuza. If you sell a Stei Achuza, a relative can come and buy it. So what would be the halacha by Moicher Bayis B'Batei Arechaim? So using Reb Shimon's logic, where since if you sell a house in Batei Arechaim, we want to help him not lose it, of course you would be able to be Nigal B'Koivim. That's not a Shaila. Our Shaila that the Gemara cleared, and the Gemara asked us to Reb Sheshes, was only according to the Rabbana. According to the Rabbanan who disagree with Reb Shimon and don't say Dashin time of the Kra, and according to the Rabbanan by Moicher Bayis Batei Arechaima, it's Einay Loiv v'Goyel and Einay L'Chatzoyin. Would they also be makbid that you can't crave him, or maybe by crave him they would be more lenient? And the question merely was, how much do we learn out of Moicher Stei Achuza? We do have a limit for Moicher Stei Achuza to Bayis Arechaima to disallow Loiv v'Goyel v'Goyel L'Chatzoyin, would it also disallow craving? So that was that Shaila. Reb Sheshes paskin, according to the Rabbanon, without a suffix, you would not be able to be nigal l'kraving. Again, but according to what he said, according to Reb Shimon, Avada, it would be able to be done. Then the Gemara started asking kasha from additional psukim. We're saying that there's no gulas craving according to the Rabbanon. Reb Sheshes said there's no gulas craving according to the Rabbanon by Moicher Bayis B'Batei Arechaim. The problem is we had two psukim that the Gemara discussed. One was Bakoil Geula Tialoi, as I'm in Loshen, and that Loshen is by Yovel. Let me go back to Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, where it quotes that pasuk. So the pasuk says, it's right at the top, the first pasuk that the Ner Mitzvah quotes over here, the Torah Shalom quotes, it says in the pasuk, "U'v'choil eretz achuzaskem geula titun la'aretz," and the Brisa tells us that that's a limud to include batim. So the Gemara suggested maybe to include batim in the leniency that kroivim could also be goyel batei arechaim, and that was a challenge to Reb Sheshes. The Gemara deflected the challenge by saying is only talking about a house in a steyachuza, a house that's not in the walled city. For Gemara, a house that's not in the walled city, I already know it's just like a steyachuza. Of course, kroivim could be goyelet. Why do I need a second pasuk? And in fact, the Gemara even found a third pasuk, a higalenu, a limud, to say, it says, one of them is to teach you also Moicher Bat. So we have three psukim that tell you that a regular house, in a steyachuza, a regular house that's not in the walled city, a korv can be goyel. Why would you need three psukim for the same halacha if it's maforish? So for that, the Gemara taught us a chiddush, and this chiddush came from Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak. And the chiddush is not only is it possible for a korv to be goyel, there's actually a chiyuv for a korv to be goyel. There's a machlekes tanoim if that's the case, but according to Eliezer, there's a chiyuv for a korv to be goyel. So that would explain why you need a second pasuk by a bias in a regular city that a korv could be goyel. The reason why you need a third pasuk is to tell you that a korv koidim. In other words, the korv that has a chiyuv to be poida his korv's field or his korv's house is only the closest relative. As it says in the pasuk, oy doidoi, oy ben doidoi. First comes doidoi, his uncle is closer to him. If he doesn't have an uncle, then it goes to ben doidoi. But only the closest korv is mandated. He has to be poida. And if he doesn't have enough money, then he can't be poida. You don't say, well, the closest relative, the doidoi, didn't have enough money. But the ben doidoi does have enough money. So let's force the ben doidoi to be poida. No, you don't do that. It's only the closest relative that you'll force to be poida, but a later relative you don't. The only time a ben doidoi would have a chiyuv to be poida is only if there was no doi. There was no uncle. There's no uncle. The uncle wasn't alive. Then there would be a chiyuv for the ben doi. That's what.
Why is the closest kurev a doidoi?
Say that again.
Why is the closest kurev an uncle?
It's not. There would be a brother first. Why the pusuk picks oidoidoi first and not brother? That's a good shaila, but that's a zaytik shaila. But the Gemara says ochiv oidoidoi, right? It doesn't. Why the pasuk doesn't say ochiv? I don't know. That's a good question. So the other thing that was legabe a steyachuza. Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak said legabe an eved hanimkar lenochri legabe an eved hanimkar lenochri. There, everybody agrees that there's for sure a chiyuv to be paid to him, and once again, it works with a korv kaidim, and that's what we learned yesterday in what seemed to be a complicated sugya, but now that we break it down, it's pretty simple. All we were doing is talking about the leniency of loiv v'goy l'chatzoyin applied to bater rechaima, as well as the leniency of kroivim, of gulas kroivim, in reference to Batei Arechaim. I hear. Okay.
And
wir soll keinem nicht davon umkommen zu Arache Vetter in Azamativ. Aha, very good. When he had a breeder, he shouldn't have been in this situation to begin with. Very, very good. Oh, I like that, Smuda. Shkoyach. Okay, so then we learned about the Nirtza, Koinat Rutzia. We learned about HaNirtza, the Nirtza HaGadol, the Martzei HaGadol. I don't know what this Martzei HaGadol is, but it's some type of big apparatus that was a drill. It was a bench press. I don't know. It was a bench drill. I don't know. But it was some big drill. And the Gemara learns that that's also an appropriate drill to do the Ritzias Ha'izin of the Kohen, of the Eved, because it's Hamar Tzei with the Hey Idea, and whenever the Torah uses the Hey Idea, it's pointing to the best one. That's why by Gidanasha it says Hayarech, so we learn it's the right one, because the right one is the dominant, because Hey means dominant. We had a machlokes also yesterday, if it has to be metal kalim that are used for the Ritzia, or if it could be any kalim. The Gemara had a machlokes, and it was totally in whether or not you darshan the pasuk with klal prat or klal, or with ribui miyut for ribui. And then we finished off, which is where we're going to pick up today, is where exactly you do the Ritzia. One sheet held it's in the soft earlobe, but that was challenged because the Gemara brought down a brisa that says everybody knows that a kohen cannot do Ritzia. Why can't the kohen do Ritzia? Because it's going to be a mum. The problem is a hole in your earlobe, like we have when we pierce our ears for rings, that's not a mum. So how could it be that we don't let a kohen get Ritzia because it's going to make him a mum if the place of the Ritzia doesn't make a mum? So therefore it must be that their place of the Ritzia is in the hard cartilage of the ear, and their hole is a mum, and therefore we cannot do it for a kohen. The next shayla that the Gemara asked was if a Adon, I think that's where we're up to right now. So let's start from Amar Abelazar. We sort of got it started yesterday, but we'll go back to it. So we're on Daf Chof Aleph Hamid Beis. Today's Daf is really Chof Beis, but let's start from here, from the two dots, a little bit down in the wide line, three lines down in the wide lines. Amar Abelazar, Yudin Baridi Hayadar, Yudan the Great would darshan the following. Kishen Reichen El Bamil, so they did it on the soft earlobe. The Chacham said, we know there's a famous law. Why? They should not have. So therefore, it's impossible that the milsa is the place. Correct the more of a yasab. If there's a mitzvah in the Torah to make ritzia, when an evet says, so let's do the mitzvah. So it'll become a balmum. The problem is, it says the shabbat mishpachtoi. After the avdus is over, he needs to be able to go back to his same status that he was at. Meaning, if he was doing avodah before, he has to continue to do avodah l'musuk shebet mishpachoi. Therefore, we don't let him become a balmum. Iboilu. A kohen, it says by a kohen, almano gerush. I'm sorry, it says in the pasuk, kiyim l'shei akar below. It says it says in the pasuk we're going to be a kohen marrying. It says that he's not allowed to marry a grusha and a zoina. I don't remember the lashon pasuk, but it's a kohen is not allowed to marry a grusha, is not allowed to marry a zoina. And the problem is if a kohen is living with a Canaanist, that's a zoina. There's the status of a zoina. So would you allow a kohen to marry the shivcha Canaanist? So every kohen maushim shloi rabbi shivcha Canaanist. Chiddushu, it's a chiddush bechlal that the Torah allows a yid to marry a goiter. So once there's a chiddush, therefore we'll say lo shnei kahanim lo shnei Yisrael. Idil mashani kahanim hoil v'riba behen akos of mitzvahs yiseros. Since a kohen has so many extra mitzvahs, it's not mistaber that this chiddush that the every marriage a goy would be allowed. Rav Amar muter, Shmuel Amar also. Rav holds it's muter, Shmuel says it's also. Amar Rab Nachman Rab Hanan. Kavisi be my Shmuel. Rab Nachman told Rab Hanan, you clearly were fooling around and playing in shir. Kavisi be my Shmuel biskumdri italisi. You were playing kugelach. You were playing with wooden chips. You were fooling around because if you had been listening carefully, you should have had a kasha right there on Shmuel. My time you could have asked him a gabaltic kasha. How could you say that we don't let a kohen marry a shivcha Canaanist? The problem is we had the chachamim. We had a brayso that said the chachamim ain't ever very kohen nirtza. Why can't the kohen become a nirtza? Because it'll be a balmum. Forget that it'll be a balmum. According to you, Shmuel, who holds that an evet kohen cannot marry a shivcha Canaanist, a prerequisite to nirtza is the fact that he's married to a shivcha Canaanist. V'im toimar ein Rabbi Moshe lo shivcha Canaanist typically the beino ahafti es adoni es ishti v'esbona v'leka. The Torah clearly says an evet nirtza has to say I love my wife, which is the shivcha Canaanist that was given to him. So clearly a prerequisite to be able to be a nirtza is a shivcha Canaanist. And according to Shmuel, where you can't do that, so there's nothing to talk about. Of course, a kohen can't be a nirtza. So why do I need a raya that that it's because it creates a mum. Never mind mum. Even if it didn't create a mum, a kohen could not become an irza. Su loy midi. There's no answer for this question. It's obvious logan. Don't kekets and ekets to try to say it's not such a kasha. You were chulaming in shir, you weren't listening, and that's why you didn't ask the kasha. It's a good kasha.
Hold on a second. How could that be? He has to be married in order for him to be a nirza. He can't stay with his adon unless he's married to a shifcha.
He has to say a hafti is ishti.
Yeah, but it's market.
He has to have the ishti. If he can't say that, he can't be a nirza.
That's not mistaber.
It says in Rashi, I think so.
Even if he wants to stay, he can't stay. He has to marry shifchas kenanis.
Correct.
If he doesn't say yoyma, you have to say it 2 times. If he doesn't say
that's it. We're about to learn that. We're about to learn that the yoyma part. Rashi Sulai Midi ain lahashav al zois. This is a checkmate. Okay, so let's see the Gemara back to Iboilu. Koyin ma'u be fastoyer. Now that we're talking about bending the rules for certain scenarios, what about a fastoyer? Is a kohen who's a warrior fighting a milchama? Is he going to be mutter to marry a fastoyer? Yes or no? Because there's a special.
After this year, I want to tell you about the word bending the rules here in this case.
Okay, so koyin ma'u be fastoyer. Chiddushu, the whole concept of fastoyer is a huge chiddush because of the different Torah al keneged Yitzhara. So therefore, loishna koyin loishna Yisrael. Adilma shaynik kahanim kaim still are a step up. Hoyel v'riba b'han mitzvah yiseres. Mitzvah yiseres. Zogt my Rav Amar mutter, Shmuel Amar aser. Rav holds it's mutter for a kohen to marry a fastoyer. Shmuel holds it's aser. The beer rishayna, and there's going to be a very big machlekes Rashi and Tosfos what the beer rishayna is. So for now, we'll say, like Tosfos, that the beer rishayna is before he goes through the whole process of the 30 days. The beer rishayna the chul amalei pligi dishari. Everybody holds its mutter because the leidibur Torah ala keneged yitzhara. A kohen's also going to be nichshal, and the whole word is there's a heter, so there shouldn't be there shouldn't be a there shouldn't be a koshel, there shouldn't be a nichshal. So therefore, a kohen's no different. So about the first beer, you'd have to say.
Did the kohanim go out to war?
The kohanim went out to war.
How could they go out to war?
Sometimes they have to go. The kohanim went out to war.
No, there was the kohen Sheikh Muhammad, but
yeah,
went to fight.
It's I mean, it could be if a kohen was needed, he went out to war. Kohanim went out to war.
I feel a kala if it's Mechemes mitzvah. I feel a kala.
That's right. So let's see the Gemara back. So if it's al Torah keneged Yitzhara, if it's al Torah keneged Yitzhara, well then it makes sense because of course a kohen has the same Yitzhara. Shmuel Amar aser. You know why? Because kol heicha de karina beiva veis al toich b'secha. If you can have at the end that he could marry her, then you have this special heter of the different Torah like keneged Yitzhara. Then you have a risa b'shivya. But kol heicha de karina beiva veis al toich b'secha. Like Karina Be'Veraisha B'Shivya. He doesn't have that either. Taner Rabbanan. V'Isa B'Shivya, we learn from here that it's B'Shas Shivya. What does B'Shas Shivya mean? Rashi says, Im Nasal Mitchila Einav Ba, V'Lon Shalachal L'Moichar L'Shivcha. The Achach Nasal Einav Ba. What if he saw her in the war, and he said, this would make a good maidservant. I need a goiter. And he takes her for that. And then he takes her home, and he says, you know what? She's pretty good looking. Maybe I want to marry her as well. That is not the heter of your fastoyer. The head of your fastoyer is only as if as soon as he saw her, he wanted her. That's where we have the head. Eishes, vafilu eishes, even though she's an eishes, your fastoyer, loidibra Torah ela keneged Yitzhara. The Torah is only saying it because of the Yitzhara. We about to see someone who his eyes is beautiful. He can't control himself, and therefore the Torah says, Mutav sheyoichlu Yisrael basar to musais shchutais. It's not appropriate to eat an animal that's about to die, and you don't want to lose the value of its meat. So because of that, you quickly shecht it. So it was about to drop dead, and you quickly shechted it so that you should be able to make it kosher. The Rashi brings down, I believe the Cheskel Novi, who said he never ate such meat. So it's not such good meat. Baal yoichlu basa temusas nevelos. If we don't let him do that, then he'll have you live with her without any heter at all. So that's why the Torah is make. V'chashakta, you want her, you have a cheshek. It's there's no beauty contest to paskin on her. Is she pretty enough to qualify as a fast lawyer? It doesn't matter if she's hideous looking. If this person has a taiva for her, then it's going to be mutter. And the Arvei Nachal, which is from the Chassidish Sforim, says that the holy heter of Yifas Toyer, it's not as crude as it seems. We know that distributed throughout the Goyim are nitzotzes of Kedusha. And the Rebbeinu Shalom makes it that by these wars, if there's a nitzotzes HaKedusha that have to be gathered into Klal Yisrael, the Rebbeinu Shalom makes it that someone should have a cheshek for her. And therefore, it's not totally in her beauty. It's totally the Rebbeinu Shalom made it that certain people are going to have a cheshek for her to be able to gather the nitzotzes of Kedusha that are in her. Avalpi she'edina and ba v'loy bo v'chaberta. You can't take two. You can only take one. V'lo kachta l'kuchen yesh lach ba. There's going to be tefisas Kedushin. And Rashi says, v'avalpi she'oisai vedis kechavim she'enim is gair midaita. She's like a shvacha geyeris. We're forcing geyeris upon her. Nevertheless, there's still going to be tefisas Kedushin. Okay? L'chal isha shelo yikach achas loy v'achas la'aviv. Rashi takes out the word shtayim and Tosfos as well, because we already know bo v'loy bo v'chaverta. So it just means you're not allowed to take for your father. You can, oh, she's a nice looking lady. I think I'll take her home for my father. That's not allowed, only for yourself. So, what does Vavesa tell you? You shouldn't be boiled her right there in the Muhammad. Rashi says, Lo v'yala. Now this is where there's a very big machloikis Rashi and Tosfos. Rashi clearly learns that the Bir Rishona is not right there when he has a taifa for her, because we learn from the pasuk Shelo Yachatena b'Muhammad. So what it means is you shouldn't start the count right away. Rather, you have to wait till you take it into your house to start the count. That's why there are those who learn Rashi's prat. But Tosfos doesn't like Rashi's prat, because if the whole thing is like Dibur Torah K'neged Torah, where you're going to wait for the Bir Rishona until after the whole process, the whole part is he can't hold himself in. He's going to fight there. He's weiter going to be over. That's one problem. The second problem that Tosfos had with Rashi is, why is it called Basar Temusas? If even the first time you're going to have beer with her, it's already after the 30 days after you Megayer her, so she's a Geyeris. So why would that be called Basar Temusas? And the third problem he has is the Gemara, the Torah tells us, the Novi tells us that Tamar told Amnon, before you violate me, speak to our father, and he'll already find a way that you could marry me beheter, because Tamar said, I am the daughter of a Yefas Toya. The first bia, if the first bia is made before he marries her, before she becomes a Geyeris, well, then the daughter of a Yefas Toya is not going to be Jewish. She'll be his total stranger. And in fact, Tamar and Amnon wouldn't be siblings, so they'd be able to get married. But if you don't like Rashi, the first bia is only after 30 days after the Geyeris, Kum Techais every Bas Yefas Toya is also a Yidana. So how could you suggest that they would be able to marry? So that those are the questions that Tosfos says on Rashi, and because of that, Tosfos says that Avad the Bir Rishona is right there in the field, no question about it. But Tosfos does offer a little bit of a pshat to for Rashi, and he says maybe you could say that Tamar's mother, the Yefas Toyer, was pregnant by the time David took her in. So what happened was David took this woman in, and David took her in as a wife, but she was pregnant. She had a child from before, and maybe that's who Tamar claims her mother was. And even though you can't have bia right away, so how does this solve the problem of Dibur Torah K'neged Yitzhara? So for that, Tosfos says maybe because he has passed Pesach, since he knows eventually he'll be able to have her, that will be enough to calm down his Yitzhara. Tana Rabbanan. In Omar Yoimar, this is what Chaim brought up earlier, there's a double ocean. He has to say it twice, Achi Yoimar v'Yeshana. He has to say twice this whole parsha of a hafti is ishti is banai leitzachavshi. It has to say twice. What happens if Amar B'tchila Sheish, Amar B'Soif Sheish? What if he only said it at the beginning of his 6 years and not at the end? Einei nirtza, he won't be nirtza. Shenemar lo eitzei chaf. So right away you have to ask, if he only said it at the beginning of the sheish, not at the end of the sheish, so he didn't say it twice. So why does the Gemara come up with a new pasuk of lo eitzei chavshi? He didn't do Amar Yomar. So because of that, Rashi says that this last case is Amar B'tchila Sheish. He said it twice. Even if he said it twice at the beginning of the 6 years, and he was Mekayim Amar Yomar, but he's not Mekayim the lo eitzei chavshi, because he has to say it at a time where he's ready to go free. What about Amar B'Soif Sheish? Sheish? He said twice this nusach that he was supposed to say, but it was all the way at the end of his 6 years.
How can you say B'tchila Sheish? So after it's ishti vesbun, he doesn't have.
That's a gewaltige kasha. That's a gewaltige kasha. Let's see the Gemara. Amar B'Soif Sheish B'tchila Sheish Ein Nirtza Shenemar Amar Yomer Eved. He has to be a nevid when he says it. He has to be, so it's a little steerdik. He has to say it when he's going free, and he has to say it when he's a nevid. So let's analyze this. Amar B'tchila Sheish V'Amar B'Soif Sheish Ein Nirtza Shenemar L'Eitzei Chavshi. Fragt the Gemara Chaim's Kasha. My area L'Eitzei Chavshi. Typically the Be'ina on the Haftis Hadoini is Ishtei V'Zbonai V'Leka. He has no idea who they were. He just started. Exactly Chaim's Kasha. V'Su Amar B'Soif Sheish V'Amar B'tchila Sheish. I don't understand. But 10 minutes before he goes free, is he not still an Eved? Of course he's still an Eved. So therefore, the Tchila Sheish means right at the end, before the last pruta of Shibud that starts, so he's still fully an Eved. Once we're past the point where there's not even a pruta of avoida left, that's when he has to say the second time. So the first time has to be close to the end, and the second time it has to be right before the end. But Lamaisha, they're both all the way at the end, and at that point he surely would have known who is Isha is and who's Banim are. Gavaldik, Taner Banim. Loi Isha Banim, Ula Rabbi Ein Isha Banim. What if he does have a wife and children, meaning from the Shivcha Kanainis, but the Adain does not have? Ein Nirtza. He's not nirtza. Shenemar ki ahevcha v'yes beisecha. He likes you meaning the adon and your house. So you see that the adon also has to have a beisecha. What about l'rabba ishu banim v'lo ishu banim? Again, any nirtza. Shenemar ahavti yes adoni yes ishti v'yes bona. What happens if who oivis rabbi v'rabbi eno yahavoy? What if he loves his adon, he wants to stay, but his adon can't take it, wants him out already? Eno nirtza. Then he can't be nirtza shenemar ki toiv loy imach. It's got to be good for you with him together. How about Rabbi Yohaboy, who ain't a Yovis Rabbi? What if his Adon likes him, but he doesn't like his Adon? Why he wants to stay on, I don't know. Ain't a nirtza, he's fighting on nirtza shenemar ki ahevcha. He has to like him. What about if who chayla of a Rabbi ain't a chayla? What if the Eved Rachman is sick and the Adon is not sick? Ain't a nirtza shenemar ki toiv loy. They take out the word imach. Here, Rashi takes out the word imach here. Kitayv loy. It has to be good for him. If he's sick, it's not good for him. What if it's Rabbi Chayla, who ain't Chayla? Again, in Nirtza, it's never imach. You have to be equal with the Adoin. He has to be healthy as well. What if Shneim Chayla? If they're both sick, imach be'inan. You need imach va'ika. They're both in the same situation, the Adoin and the Eved. It has to be toiv together, va'leka, and we don't have that. The Gemara obliges to take. I do not have shot in this Gemara, and I'll tell you why. Because in the first clause, the Brisa asks, what if he's sick and his Adon is not sick? Zokt the Gemara, Einer Nirtza. Why? Because it says Kitoiv loy. And Rashi takes out the word imach, Kitoiv loy. So we know he has to be doing well, Toiv loy. So how could the Gemara at the end declare a Shaila if they're both sick, it should work? It's missing the Toiv loy. So I simply don't know Taich in the Gemara. I looked up the article. I'm sorry?
Suras Rabim Chutzi Nechoma. If I'm sick and he's well, then it makes me more sick. But if he's sick,
I hear. Okay, very good. Shkoyach. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. Tony Rabbana. Ki toiv lo imach b'maichel, imach b'maichel, imach b'mishnah, He has to be equal to you. Shaloi te'at oichel pas nikia, u'oichel pas kibur, ata shoyse yain yoshan, u'shoyse yain chodosh. Or ata yoshan al gavi muchin, u'yoshan al gavi tevin. Mikan from here they said, Kala koina eved ivri, ki koina adon la'atzmoi. You buy an eved ivri, it's like you have an adon. He has such high levels of how you have to take care of him. It's not even kedai. And as we said a couple of days ago, and that's exactly how it's supposed to work, because we only want very benevolent people to buy a avodim to teach them by example how they need to behave. Taner Rabbanan, the yotze me'imach hu banavimoi. So let's look at this pasuk. This pasuk is not in Mishpatim. It's in, I think, in Vayikra where it discusses the Eved Hanirtza. Let me just look at the pasuk over here. The yotze me'imach it's in Vayikra. The yotze me'imach hu banavimoi v'shav el mishpachtoi v'lachuzas aviv yoshev. So this is talking about an Eved Hanirtza. So let's see what the Gemara Darshan says. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Taner above Yotzim Imachu Banavim. Rabbi Shimon Imhu Nimkar. What do you mean he goes out with his children? Imhu Nimkar. Imhu Nimkar. Banav of a noise of Minim Karim. What do you mean his children go out with him? His children were never avodim. Mikani. From here you see Sheraboy Chayev b'Mezoynus Banav. When someone is an Eved, the Adon is responsible to support the children. It says in Baal Ishahu v'yatza ishti imay. That's in Mishpatim. What do you mean she goes free with him? She was never sold. Once again, Mikan Sheraboy Chayev b'Mezoynus Ishta. So this Adon bottom Eved every oyat angaklef maftir. Sai has to treat this Eved like the best, fanciest VIP guest. And on top of that, he's got to support this Eved's family and his wife. Utricha, and you need a pasuk to tell you that he had to support his wife and his children, because you wouldn't know one from the other. The children are young, they're not able to support themselves. She can get a job and support herself. Maybe she needs to get a job. Her way is not to knock on doors to ask for charity. It's a busha for her. You should not support them. So it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that an Adon has to support. He has to support the Eved's wife, and you basically imagine a family that's two-income family. The wife has to work very hard. The husband has to work very hard, and the wife says, "You know what, my husband? This is ridiculous. Sell yourself as a slave. You'll be treated in the lap of luxury, and I won't have to work anymore." What a concept. Taner Rabbanan.
Rehab.
What's that?
A rehab.
Yeah. Taner Rabbanan. So let's look onto Amud Beis. Beautiful Gemaras here. Taner Rabbanan. Idul Nemer Oznoi. So let's see the pasuk. This is the pasuk in Vayikra as well, talking about the Nirtza. So it says over here as follows in the pasuk. It says, "V'sigoi v'gishay adoinav el ha'elohim v'gishay el adelas oil ha'mezuzah v'rotza adoinav is oslei b'martzei v'avodei la'olam." That is the pasuk in Mishpatim. But in the Varim, when it speaks about a nirtza, it says, "V'lakachtes ha'martzei v'nesata ba'oznoi uvadelas." So that's what the Gemara is focused on. Be'oznoi u with the vav ha'machaber uvadelas v'ilach ha'eved olam v'af ha'moschat ha'asakeh. So let's see what this is referring to. Zog the Heilige Gemara. Ilu nemar ba'oznoi badelas. Without the be'oznoi ubadelas. Ha'yishomer yidkar keneged oznoi badelas. Right? If it didn't say ubadelas, if it just said oznoi badelas, not be'oznoi, I would have said that what you do is you make a hole in the door connected his ear, but not necessarily in his ear. Delas in oznoi loy. Frank the is that what you would suggest, that you wouldn't have to make drill a hole in the ear, only in the delas? Faksiv, but it says in Mishpatim v'rata adoinav es oznoi bar martzeya. So clearly, you do have to drill a hole in the ear. So I wouldn't have thought that you only drill a hole in the door. Don't drill the ear of the Eved by the door. Go into a surgical room, drill the hole there, then let him walk up to the door so you could see exactly at what level the hole is, Maybe after you do the operation and you drill his ear, then he stands to the door and he drills a hole in the door, connected with a hole in his ear. It has to happen together. You put his ear against the door, you drill through his ear, and then continue through the door. This door doesn't necessarily have to be on its hinges. It could be a door on the floor. Mezuzah is a doorpost. Standing mezuzah mu'umid, avdelas nami mu'umid. Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai Yedarish is a mikra zeh kamin chaymer. Rabbi Yochanan darshan this pasuk beautifully. There's two pshatim in kamin chaymer. The one is beautifully like a gem, but Tosfos brings down another pshat that I wouldn't mind if somebody looked at the art scroll to see what it means. Rashi says chaymer is ma'aseh. What do you do? What do you do? So I'm not sure how that translates here into Darish Kamin Chaymer. He darshened it like a job. I'm not sure exactly how it's tight according to Tosfos. And this was his question.
I have a shal on the Friedrich thing. When you have a door leaning, being on the floor, you say that's maybe a dallas or not. But when you have the hinges, the door post, then it's for sure. Ma mezuzah me'imid. Why is the mezuzah more me'imid? Or it's only called a mezuzah. It's not called a
because the doorpost is a vertical thing.
Right.
The doorpost is normally not dislodged from the wall of the house. It's part of the wall of the house. But a door could be dislodged. Where they do clear a shaila is, sometimes you have a walk into the basement and the two doors are not standing vertical. The two doors are lying flat and they also have hinges. So they talk about that.
So what's the shal how to put the mezuzah there?
I think the shal is also for Nitza it works. But let's see if we can push on. I want to see if we can finish the daf still. So Zok to Gemara, this is what it says. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Oizun sheshama koili al har Sinai b'shor shamarti, ki li b'nei Yisrael avodim, le'avodim le'avodim, v'olach zev ha'konot l'atz. Yirtza, this guy's a bad guy, because he should have heard what I said in Sinai, that you're my avodim, you shouldn't be avodim le'avodim. Therefore, he's Yirtza. Rab Shimon, B'Rabbi Yodosh, is a mikra zek min chaymer, man ishana delas mezuzah, we call Karen Shvabais. Those happens you drill it by the delas and by the mezuzah. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Delas and mezuzah, so you ate him b'mitzrayim b'shasha pasachti ala mashkois. Al-shter mezuzahs. They all witnessed me taking Klal Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, redeeming them from Avdos l'cheres. V'marti ki li b'nei Yisrael avodim, v'lo avodim la'avodim. V'yitzei me Avdos l'cheres, and now v'holach zeh v'kana adon l'atmai yirtzeh b'chnei. So they ask the shaila, so oy bazoi, as soon as he becomes an eved, he should get drilled. Why do we wait until later when he says he wants to stay on? The avla was done right away. So there are those who answer that when he first became an eved, he's going through suffering because he has to do avdos. So that would be his kapara. That would be his kapara for violating his freedom that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him. But if he wants to stay on, that's no kapara for him. He had no problem with the avdos. So if he wants to stay on, only then does he need the ritzia. So we moved on from Evet Ivri, and now we're discussing the parish of Evet Knani. Evet Knani nikne bekesev v'shtar v'chazaka. He could be kind. You could be kind with kesef, with star, or with chazaka. The Gemara is going to explain exactly how they work. The kanyas atzma is bekesef al yidei achayim. He could be kind himself if somebody else redeems him with kesef because he can't be kind anything because mashakon evet kana rabbi. But if his adam gives him a star to free him, that would be a good yisiyah. Divrei Reb Meir. But the chamayim, even the kesef al yidei atzma, he could free himself with his own kesef. How will he get kesef? We'll see in just a minute. Uvistar al yidei achayim. Star has to be accepted by other people. Now, how does the kesef work? It has to be a third party gave David kesef al manas she'ein l'rabach v'shuspach. That will create a little carve out for the evet to be able to have kesef that his other does not have rishus. The Gemara will talk about this. Minola, how do we know that a evet could be purchased with all of the kinyonim that you could purchase a karka with? You are treated just like a steachuza that's passed on from generation to generation. Break the more. If that's the case, just like a steachuza goes back to its original owner by Yovel, maybe if Evet Kanani Chazal Bayil by Yovel, that Kanani should go free by Yovel as well. Talmud Loimer, a different pasuk, La'olam B'hem Ta'avaydu, you must work with them forever. Tana we learned, Af B'chalipin. Our mission does not list off Kinyan Chalipin with which you could be kind on Evet Kanani, but the Brisa says you could be kind on Evet Kanani with Chalipin. Dr. Gemara, the Tana Didan, our Tana agrees that you could be kind an Evet every with an Evet Kanani with Chalipin, just as you can be kind of Karka with Chalipin. So why didn't I Tana list it? Milsa the Lesser b'metaltlin Katani, Milsa the Isa b'metaltlin like Katani. Our Tana was dealing with an exclusive set of kinyanim that only apply to Karka. Amar Shmuel, Evet Kanani nikle b'meshicha. You could be kind on Evet Kanani b'meshicha. Keitzad Takba. If you grab him uvaatla and you pull them towards you, Kana, you're kind of. How about Kara uvaatla? You just called them, come here, John. Like Kanu, that wouldn't be a meshicha. Zakmar b'shleim l'tana didam. B'shleim according to our Tana. Milta the Isa the metaltli like Katani. The less of metaltli Katani. Why, if meshicha is a valid kinyan, why didn't our Mishnah list it? Our Mishnah didn't list it because our Mishnah doesn't list things that apply to metaltlin. And therefore, our Mishnah didn't list meshicha. Elatana bra, but the Tana who listed chalipin, even though it's something that applies to metaltlin, list the meshicha. Why didn't that Tana list the meshicha as well, which applies to metaltlin? He also has standards. He katani milsa disa bein b'makarki, bein b'makarki, bein b'metaltlin. Chalipin works for karka and metaltlin. That's why it was listed. But meshicha the b'metaltlin isa b'makarki lesa like katani. The Brisa doesn't want to list kinyonim that only apply to metaltlin and not to karka. Ketzat. Let's go back to how you do the meshicha. Takva yuba like kana. You grab the eved, you pull him towards you. That's a meshicha. But kara yuba like you merely call to him like kana, you won't be kind. If you call to someone and he comes because of you calling him, isn't that not considered like you're moving him? But Tanya, how are you kind of an animal in Masira? Doesn't says grab his leg and you grab it. Besira, grab the mane. The saddle, the shlif shalal. Shlif Rashi says is masay, his load of a permishavapia, or the thing in his mouth, ubezuk shabbetsavara, or the ring that's on its neck, kana. Those are all methods of mesira. Catered the meshicha. How does the meshicha work by behema? If you call the animal and it comes. So you see, calling is considered meshicha. So why by nevet knani is it not meshicha? Another kinyan is you hit the animal and it runs. Kivin shakri yad v'regel. Once the animal moves a hand and a foot, kana you're kind of. Abasi v'amilar bachaimer achithalach lefan the if the animal is 6 feet long, it has to walk at least 6 feet. So, Dr. Gemara, there's a difference between behema, we're calling it as a meshicha, versus eved, we're calling it as not a meshicha. Behema died to the Mara Asla. A behema is bottled, a behema has no cycle, he just follows along when his owner calls him. So that's why calling him is called schlepping him. But eved has intelligence. That's why it's not a meshicha. Amar Vashi, however, an eved katan to behema. An evet cotton is like a behema because he also has no seichel on his own, and if you call him, he comes naturally. Taner Rabbanan ketzad b'chazaka. How does chazaka work? If the evet or the kanadi takes off his shoe, or he carried your kelim to the base merchatz. If shita, he got you undressed, or chitza, he washed you, sacha, he smeared your garden, he scraped you, he got you dressed, and Eli, he put on your shoes, he bayu if he picked you up. If the Eved picks up the other and kana, he's kind of, that's chazaka. Amar Shimon, loy say chazaka gedoyle me'agba. Chazaka shouldn't be better than agba. So agba kind of b'chamakaim. Agba works everywhere. In fact, my kamar, what's Reb Shimon talking about? Who said agba doesn't work? Amar Rabashi said you have to quote the Brisa differently. Higibeyu hula rabbi kan. The Brisa says if the Eved picks up the other, the Eved is kind of the other. But if the other picked up the Eved loikot, and in that Reb Shimon asked, Kinyan Agba should work everywhere. Reb Shimon says, Chazaka Gedel Me'agba, Shagba Karla B'chol Makam. Zok to Gemara, Hashta, the Amrit. Now that you're telling me that Hagba works, you're telling me that if the Eved lifts up the Adon, that's a chazaka, and with that, the Adon is kind of the Eved. Well, in Ibizaya, Shivch Knainis, which we know you cannot be kind of Bebiyah, you should be able to be kind of her Bebiyah. Why? Because when someone's being born a woman, he's on top of her. So technically, she's lifting him. So why shouldn't that be the chazaka of Hagba? So when do we say Kinyan Hagba works? It's considered you showing your ownership over the Eved. That's then the end of Zemet's tire. When an Eved lifts you up, he's working hard, he's sweating, and you're enjoying, you're relaxing. That shows that you're exerting violence over it. But if it's a bia of a shivchach nainis, zen henu zen henu. They're both in Gavano. The fact the Gemara, what about Shaloi Kedarka? I guess the Gemara assumes that Shaloi Kedarka does no Hano. Michael and Meimar, that should be a good Kinyan. First of all, man leim along the lav Hano is lahula tervayu. First of all, who said by a bia Shaloi Kedarka there is no Hano? We have a pasuk that equates a bia Shaloi Kedarka with a bia Kedarka. So therefore, it would not be kind. So let's stop here, and we'll be mamshech tomorrow with a fascinating story.
Doesn't this show bias that he could boil her?
But not if she has a no. The Gemara says if the Eved has a no from it, it doesn't show bias. It only shows bias if the Eved is sweating and working hard and lift up his Adon, and his Adon is relaxing and having an easy time.
Okay, the what I wanted to tell you, I don't remember by which side, but he was a big fighter. Maybe it's Tichsam Seif, I'm not sure. But I just saw it the previous week in one of the Gilyoinas that they had a fight with the Vice Conservative, Vice Schwellige, and they wanted from the Aluche from Yefastoya to show like the Torah that when something is too hard, the Torah is matter. So they wanted to come and have it up with him. So he got wind that they're coming, and right when they came in, he says, "Loi dibru Torah ele keneged li'atzah." It means the Torah wasn't matter anything else. Keneged li'atzah, only this. So,
who are you saying this over from? I wanted to say that over. That's a very famous story. Where from here you see that if the Torah has a policy that a mensch kenish anal, the Torah is materit, it's a klar raya that every other mitzvah in the Torah can zechiyah hershon ibudi etzahar. Right. That's I'll listen again. I'll try to remember who I heard it from. Shkoyach. Shkoyach Shimon. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Mazel tov, Get angry at me now. Because I cut out your word or whatever. Because it says less.
Unfortunately, ich hashoin yoytze giving.
The Baba Beruf, sie gewähnt, die Gedichtien, wenn Kasten gemacht mit Moshe, mit Stempel. Stempel was wie heißt das? He was a parliament member in sie gehen zwei jüdische parliament members. Sie gewähnt,
in Europe.
Ja, der Mai Shapiro and Pam Stempel. So by the Chippe, he screamed at him something. Okay, and then said, okay, but she heard to take it.
Okay, ich habe schon Yosy gewesen. Mit der Chazanische. Schkoyach.
Thank you, Mensch.
That's it. And Baruch Hashem, we caught up. We're now back on the daf.
This is a rented place, or it's well?
No, this is a very close friend of my wife. Has this house in Lakewood, and she's letting us use it. So she does what a lot of people did. She lives in Flatbush. She has children in Lakewood. Just like my children, they want me to buy a house in Lakewood with a swimming pool, but they want me to live in Toronto.
I was staying in Muncie. It's across the street, aiming to went to Lakewood, and I thought, a mansion, so like they come out against you.
But also, this is the biggest house in Lakewood. The biggest house in Lakewood is called